Thank you for being here and for listening to me and for letting me share with you this topic that I'm really interested in that is going to benefit you a lot, especially in times like this when there's uncertainty. So on top of the potential physical stress, there's also mental stress that comes from not knowing when this is going to be over and a lot of restrictions we face in our lives. So just want to have a quick question here based on the topic that I have, safeguarding yourself and building immunity against mental stress through thought coherence. So does anyone here have any expectations just based on the description of what I have? If anyone has any, you can put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and just say it. If not, then maybe let me give you a little bit of introduction of what thought coherence is all about. If you imagine our mind, we have a lot of thoughts coming into us. Some of these thoughts, thank you, George. So some of these thoughts we have, some of them we are more conscious of them. Some of them we are not so conscious of. So if you imagine this whole screen that you see, are filled with thoughts that are passing. So the thoughts at the top part of the screen are those that we are more conscious of, and thoughts at the bottom part of the screen that we are not so conscious of. And usually it's the thoughts that we are not so conscious of because they are beyond our awareness. If these thoughts are unhelpful thoughts like, when is this COVID virus going to end? What's going to happen to my clients? What's going to happen to me? All this cause a lot of stress to the body, including psychosomatic stress. So usually when someone were to experience any form of psychosomatic stress, they are related to these thoughts that people are not so conscious of. So by thought coherence, I'm looking at aligning the thoughts that we are more conscious of with the thoughts that we are not so conscious of, so that these thoughts that we are in control, even though we are moving, we are leading them in the right direction for us to reach our goals. But if the unconscious thoughts are in the opposite direction, that's going to cause internal conflict in us. So sometimes we make certain decisions. We want to do something, but somehow at the back of our mind, it's like something is holding us back. But you may think to yourself, I don't know why. It's like something isn't totally right. Something is amiss, when I want to move on with this. And with more experience, when people gain more exposure to life, and then they realize that, actually it's because I did not see what are the potential pitfalls. So let me just change the view. Is there a way for me to look at everyone?
You can change your view so that you can see everybody's thumbnail, should we say.
Oh, okay.
So it's in the top right-hand corner, I think, Bingsy. Well, it is on my computer.
I see. Okay, no worries. I'm good. So back to thought coherence here. So it's quite common and quite often that a lot of mental wellness programs that involves affirmations, things that are self-empowering, and also to take note of our thoughts so that in case we start to think negative thoughts, we can reframe our mind and start to change them to something positive. This works very well if someone is very conscious, and it works on all the thoughts that are on the surface, that are really conscious. When it comes to thoughts that are deep and unconscious, that we are not aware of, it's hard to reframe them. So what I do in thought coherence is to get people to see the contrast here, the differing thoughts, and to find ways to align them with each other. And with this alignment, then people can fall back to working on their conscious thoughts and make sure that they are in line with our goals. And that less conscious and the more conscious thoughts will be able to work with each other. So I know when I say about thoughts, when I talk about the thoughts, it seems it's very abstract, It's very hard for people to really understand what I'm saying. So maybe I come up with an example of what are two thoughts that are on opposing end of the spectrum. The first one is thoughts that are a thought that's related to how to make things work, how to get something done in the most efficient manner. Whereas another end of the spectrum of the thought could be what resonates with me, what I like the most. So these two thoughts, these two thoughts may seem to be on opposing ends of each other, but they can collaborate with each other. If you think of how something can be done most efficiently, but tweak it such that you like it, and that's going to give you bring you a lot of joy in what you do. So that's going to sustain well. It wouldn't just work right now, it's going to work in the long run, because if you like it, you are able to continue to do it. If it resonates well with you, if it's in line with your internal beliefs and values, then you can continue to do that. And the opposite is also true. If you are already doing something that you like, but if it does not work, let's say it does not make you money, or if it does not help others achieve their goals, for example, but how do you tweak it such that it works well and efficient, so that whatever you like, whatever that brings joy to you, can bring you more joy when it works well, when it brings others results, and that allows you to monetize also. So this is an example of how thought coherence can work. But of course, these are just two examples of thoughts. So right now at this point in time, does any one of you have any questions for me with regards to thought coherence and the general concept and idea?
Bingsy, I do.
Oh, yeah.
You may well answer this in the upcoming presentation. So if you do so. So what you mentioned, you may like something and you're more likely to do something, right? But what if I don't like doing it, but I know it must be done?
Yeah, that's right. So in that case, the key is in the first place, why is this something that needs to be done? Is it because it helps you to achieve something else that you like? If it is, that's thought coherence. Yeah.
Got you.
So reminding yourself of the things of what you want to achieve. Yeah, that's a good question. Perhaps this example of doing what works and doing what you like, it may not resonate well with everyone. So perhaps I can give you another example, because the truth is all of our psychological constructs are very different. So another example that I can think of is when it comes to the way we handle things, the way we handle schedules, for example. So some people's way of doing things is to just is to just get all the data they can possibly get. Whatever schedule that's available, we just get it. Whereas some people's way of handling things is to make sure everything is well organized first before even getting everything. So this act of making sure everything is structured and the act of just getting everything in first, they are sort of like on opposing end of the spectrums. So how do we make it such that these two comes together? So instead of another example, I will give something more specific. So this may not be so much about thoughts. Let me try to.
Can you take the camera down a little bit, Bingsy? I only can just see the forehead.
Perhaps I give a real example of myself. For me, for a very long time, I have a very strong need to organize things well before I can go on to get something done. So when I was young, it took me forever to set something up, to take any action. I need to make sure that I can see the whole thing before I take the first step. And oftentimes, I end up not taking that first step, because without taking that first few steps, I cannot see anything. Yeah. So this includes things like embarking on the project work, like doing a talk like this. If I'm not able to, if it's me in the past, I would have asked Joe, what's the exact structure like, or is there a presentation outline that can give me that I can follow, or if it's something free, if it's freestyle, so I have to come up with an exact presentation and the exact slides and what to say before I can speak in front of you all now. So it's very different. But now I've come to realize that that's not very that can affect my ability to organize also. Because in the first place, to be able to structure things, I need to have the things to be in place first. So I'm sort of like someone creating all these boxes here, with nothing being placed in there. And when I do get something, all of this cannot fit into any of these boxes. So not sure if that's a more relatable example. So perhaps I can go into the specific technicality, and give you all an overview. Let me share a whiteboard with you. All right. So if we look at the thought processes that everyone have, we can subdivide them into two major categories. So just to give you an overview of the thought processes, there are 8 different thought processes based on this psychological framework that I'm following. So this psychological framework is by someone called Carl Jung. Perhaps I can write that down.
Carl Jung.
Yeah, Carl Jung. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. So this psychologist is the one who theorized that everyone makes use of 8 different thought processes, or he calls it cognitive functions. These 8 functions, they work differently. Some of them are on opposing ends of the spectrum. Some of the examples I picked up earlier, I picked out actually a couple. They are on opposing end of the spectrum. Even though they seem like they oppose each other, they do not exactly oppose each other. In fact, based on how I described things earlier, things that seems to oppose each other, they are supposed to work well with each other and integrate into each other. But the problem with everyone individually is that our bias towards one over the other causes us to see them to conflict with each other. And this things becomes worse when one of it we are more conscious of it and the other we are not so conscious of. So sometimes the conflict happens, we may not even be aware that it's happening. That's something that happens with us like every day, not just with one incident, but with every incident. Because this psychological construct is something that stays with us. And what caused these thought processes to be ordered and arranged in a particular manner is more of the experiences we have since young when we grow up. So whatever experiences we have that cause the use of certain thought processes to be lodged in one of the deeper consciousness of the brain, it causes to selectively focus and emphasize on the experiences we have to reinforce the way we use all these thought processes. This stuff may be a little bit advanced. Maybe I can go a little bit more into that later. For now, let's come back to the thought processes. So the 2 main major thought processes are either observe or decide. Yeah. Is everyone still with me here? If you are, can you raise your hand? I think there's a raise hand function there to just let me know that you are still with. All right, thanks. Okay, then let me move on. So observing, everyone observe information, and we also decide based on opinion. Yeah. Does that make sense to everyone? Yep. So just based on this, before I go on, just based on people either observe, then make a decision, or already have a decision and then make observation to check the decision. Just looking at these 2 kind of differences, how would you think someone who's observed then decide? How do you think they behave differently from someone who decide first then observe? So I will give everyone perhaps 3 minutes to think about it, and then you can actually write it down in the chat and then give me your thoughts on that.
Would people who observe be looking for role models or existing processes that have done somewhat achieve to some degree somewhat what they would like to achieve or think?
So compared to decide, if someone who decide first, how would it be different? How do you think it will be different?
Good question. They wouldn't need to do any necessary research or gain anybody's opinion.
Okay.
And would just decide for themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Is there a difference in, would observe be externally motivated and decide be internally motivated? Is there any crossover?
Oh, okay. Okay, I see one of an interesting answer. Yeah. Okay, I will go into that later. I think that guy is Adrian. Okay, so back to Joe now. Yeah, so, okay, so someone says that people who observe first accept that they do not know everything. Yeah, this is valid also. So, so what Joe is saying is decide based on opinion. So there's so Joe's answer is based on if someone were to decide based on personal opinion, self-opinion, rather than looking at what's the collective opinion or the collective wisdom coming from everybody. Whereas if someone were to observe first, it's more to collect certain things first, maybe collect data or to do research on existing methodologies that already happen. Yeah. All these are valid. Yeah. Just to be a little bit clear about it, observe and decide. Yeah. It is basically perceiving and judging. This is what Jung's original works talks about actually. Just that I use the terms observe and decide instead, just so that it's more relatable to everyone. So the main difference is someone who observe, they are looking at information. So they might not have come to a decision or a conclusion yet. It's more of like things still needs some. They need something. They need information, either data or they need to know the trend and the pattern that's already going on before coming up with something like this, an opinion, to decide on something. So to make it clearer, what's the difference? Perhaps I can go on to tell you what's the difference here. Observe, because we are observing information. The two ways to observe information are either to organize or to gather. So someone who organize is someone who organize rather than gather. If you imagine there are like 3 or 4 cups over here, an organizer will want to arrange the cups very nicely, It has to be arranged like this way or maybe in a certain shape or pattern that he likes. So that's organizer. Gatherer is, the cups are here, They can be arranged in any way. It doesn't matter so long as all the cups are in place. So that's the main difference. So based on this description of an organizer and a gatherer, between organizer and gatherer, who do you think is the one who's more structured? Can you type either tell me or type it in the chat? Organizer, gatherer, who is more structured?
Sorry, Bingzi, you want us to tell us who you think we are?
Oh, what I mean is between organizer. Okay, so someone said organizer is more structured. So anyone else? So my question is between an organizer and a gatherer. One of them is more structured.
Okay.
Who do you think is more structured? So another answer coming in, organizer is more structured. And okay, if there are no more answers coming in, then I should go on. Okay, organizer creates structure, gatherer gets all info, which is okay, cool. That's fair. Yeah. So I will go a bit more into that later. Yeah. In fact, the answer about it depends. Yeah. That's a sign of coherence actually. Yeah. Yeah, good job on that.
Yeah. Stefan can't. Something's wrong with Stefan's mic or something like that. He only can chat today. Normally he's quite chatty. He only can chat in the chat box today. Normally he's quite vocal.
Okay, cool. So if you look at an organizer and a gatherer, one of them is an introvert, another is an extrovert. Yeah. So who do you think is the extrovert over here between the organizer and the gatherer? So someone who's structured, who's looking at things and making sure that everything is like well put together, So he's taking the time to make sure that things are done. Whereas the gatherer is someone who's like, okay, just take action first, and then we can actually sort things out later. So which one is the extrovert? So I've got a few answers. Stefan is not very sure. Yeah. Okay, so let me reveal to you the answer here. Organizer is, I see, confused. Okay, then let me clear the confusion over here. An organizer is introverted and the gatherer is extroverted. Yeah. So I will go a little bit more into introversion and extroversion later. So right now, I believe most people's idea of an introvert and an extrovert is more of an introvert is someone who's so most people have this notion that an introvert is someone who's quiet, who doesn't talk much, or who's maybe shy in social environment, whereas an extrovert is the opposite. They easily open up to people, they easily speak, they are loud and things like that. So that's all those are valid. But as for why they are valid, yeah, that can be explained through whether an extrovert is a gatherer, or something else. There's something else. The answer lies in deciding, which I'm going to go into. So opinion, earlier Joe mentioned something about someone who decides, so they do not need to worry so much about whether it's an opinion that's formed by everyone or by most people. So that's basically deciding based on self-opinion, whereas the opposite end of the spectrum of self-opinion is in fact tribe opinion. Or this tribe, it can simply mean a community. Yeah, extrovert recharges with other people and introvert recharges alone. Yeah, that's valid also. In fact, that is a sign of self versus tribe. So in fact, between self and tribe, okay, instead of getting you to think about which one, who is the introvert and who is the extrovert, I shall reveal to you the answer over here. So someone who's self above tribe is an introvert, and someone who's tribe above self is an extrovert. So really, you can see over here that an introvert, someone may be an introvert who's self above tribe, but can still be an extrovert, being a gatherer above organizer. So it's possible for someone to recharge on their own, but yet they are a gatherer and they go out, just gather stuff and get things before sorting things out. It's also possible for someone to be an introvert because he organizes more than he gathers, but at the same time, he's particular about what's the collective opinion that everyone has. So he prefers to form an opinion that's in line with everyone in the team, or even in line with at least 70 or 80% of this team. Does that make sense to everyone? So to give you a little bit more depth about introversion or extroversion. So if you look at introversion, it's sort of like a flask that is deep and narrow and is filled up with water. Whereas extroversion, so introversion is represented by something like this, and extroversion is represented by something like this. So there are actually advantages and disadvantages on both sides. Of course, the key is to be able to merge both of them, and that's what coherence is all about. With coherence, you are getting the best of both worlds. Introvert is, the downside to that is they are pretty narrow when it comes to what are some of the things that they are looking out for. Their scope of interest is restricted to just these few things, or maybe just this one thing even for extreme cases. But they are very deep and they go very in-depth into that few topic of interest. Whereas an extrovert is someone who's more scattered, so they have a wider broad of interest, but the downside to that is they are also more shallow, not going in depth in any of it. And of course, both introverts and extroverts have got characteristics from both sides, of course. Then the goal is to achieve coherence to get this. So this introvert and extrovert, if someone is self versus tribe. So an introvert, the downside of that can be he's very self-contained, in whatever he has in mind or whatever viewpoint he has. Maybe it's a very strong viewpoint, but he can go very deep into it to justify why that's the case. Whereas someone who's tribe above self, he's someone who wants to integrate everybody's viewpoint, but this guy may not have much depth into justifying whatever viewpoint that he took up, because all these viewpoints are not his own viewpoint. He didn't think through them deeply, about what caused him to come up with these conclusions. All these are simply things that's instilled upon him. So it can include things like propaganda, or culture of something. This happens when someone blindly follows certain culture or certain norms. This is an example of tribe above self for introversion and extroversion. Yeah. But how about organize and gather? Someone who's organized has got a clear structure in mind. So they like this structure so much. If anything that they were to handle falls within this structure they have in mind, they will be so comfortable and they are very quick at getting things done. When it comes to all these things, it may not be speed. Sometimes it's their ability to go in depth to get something done really well. Whereas someone who's gather above organized and extrovert, he's capable of doing new things and picking up things very fast. Just like that, it's very, very easy for him to get started on something new. But to go in depth into it and to have clear structure is something that he needs a bit more work on. So that's the main difference between introvert and extrovert on both spectrum, the observing spectrum and the deciding spectrum. So at this point in time, is everyone still with me? So in that case, I guess the last 10 minutes, I would like you to think about what are if it's for you yourself, are you an extrovert or an introvert on either spectrum based on whatever that I just shared with you? Can you comment in the chat box?
Bingsy, could this be two? Let's say the 3 areas of your life: health, relationships, career. Could there be a difference in each one of those areas?
Yes, it is. It could be. So different aspects of life, we are taught to do things differently. So for example, someone may be self above tribe when it comes to personal life, for example. But when it comes to career, when it comes to business, they are the opposite. It's actually quite common for that, especially for people who are high flyers, for people who are high performers. Because what happens is if someone is an extreme self-above tribe for general aspects of their life, but they work really hard and they want to do really well in, let's say lifting, for example, or maybe not lifting. Let's say in business, for example. Yes, it is possible to be introvert on both spectrum. Yeah. So back to Joe's question. So for this guy to do very well in business, he probably realized that he has to emphasize on what he tend to neglect. So, and him having the internal drive, having the motivation to emphasize more on tribe rather than self-opinion, it can also stem from wanting something that he can be proud of. So it's still somehow tied down to his self-identity. So in that case, there's actually a bit of a coherence over here. But the question should be, which one resonates well and best with you on the general aspect? So if let's say you find it hard to answer it, which is often the case if you are doing well, or if you went through some form of growth journey, it may not be easy to answer. But from a general point of view, would you consider yourself an introvert or extrovert on either spectrum?
Introvert, both, I believe.
Yeah, sorry, Joe, you were saying?
Introvert. Yeah. In organized and self-introvert.
I see. Okay, cool. And how about the rest? You have any idea? If not, perhaps I can wrap things up by telling you what are some of the practical ways to be more coherent between this. So I guess the example of self above tribe I sort of went into it a little bit. So someone who makes decision based on self-opinion, he has a very strong human need towards his self-identity, towards whatever that he can, that comes up to him, that when he goes for it, is actually he's being true to himself, living the life that he wants to be, rather than being influenced by others. So, but the thing is to be able to see everything fully by considering the opinion of the general population and the majority. He can see how whatever he has, whatever strong opinions he has, can be tweaked so that the majority can do well and can apply whatever he has to offer. So someone who's self-above tribe may have very unique viewpoints, and by considering the tribe's opinion, it allows this unique viewpoint to be brought forward, to be made more visible, and that actually helps him to safeguard his self-identity, because this self-identity is being validated by the tribe. So does that make sense? The main thing about making self and tribe coherent with each other is to see how your self-identity can be validated by more people so that it becomes stronger in you. Whereas someone who's tribe above self, who has a strong human need towards tribe validation, the important thing to bear in mind is to have some form of self-identity so that the tribe can validate you as an individual, rather than just one of the many thousand soldiers, that's around here. So this person who craves tribe validation may end up having nothing for people to validate, especially if he's not that much different from everyone else and just blindly following orders. Does that make sense to everyone?
Easy. Questions came through privately. How can one hack their coherence?
Good idea. So for me, what I do is I make use of muscle testing to help people find out the order of consciousness of this different human needs, as well as the individual thoughts. So I mentioned before that there are actually 8 different thought processes, and the 8, they are in a specific order. So there are more that I don't think I have the time to present today, but with more stuff being branched out and the 8 having a certain structure to it, I came up with a 12-step system extension. It's an extension to the original Jungian theory, Jungian as in Carl Jung. So by following those steps, I structure it such that the very first step, I work on the 2 functions that's the easiest to make them coherent with each other. And the last step is the one that's the hardest. The last step involves making the first and the 8th function coherent with one another because of how far apart they are. It does take some effort to be able to reach there, but in order to reach there, people would have gone through the 12 steps. So it helps it actually helps them to hack it faster.
If we don't do the muscle testing, and I can speak of the muscle testing because Bingzi has, I've been lucky enough to experience Bingzi's service.
Oh.
I'm assuming the muscle testing is almost a shortcut to finding out the solution answers over trying to figure this out ourselves, right?
Yeah.
If one did get stuck with this or are very unaware of this, I suppose, how long would it, I don't think there's a length of time. If one doesn't know of this or is aware of it, they would continue to possibly fall short in an area of their life that they have just come to accept possibly, right? Or do you have to be quite self-aware and open-minded to such things in which you share with people, muscle testing, etc., this thought coherence? Do you find like a type of person comes to you, Bingzi? That's what I'm trying to say.
So when it comes to, you're asking like whether there's a way people can shortcut,
which you shared with the muscle testing.
Muscle testing, like on their own, they can.
They can.
Yeah, they can. Okay. So if it's on their own, so what I would suggest is to focus on the big concepts, like the concept of self and tribe, how they actually help out with each other, how they integrate and help each other to be stronger rather than them opposing each other. The very first thing that opposes coherence is, in fact, individual's ego, especially if someone has a very strong ego attachment towards either self, and they will have a very strong despise towards tribe validation. So just this is one of the crippling stumbling blocks, to prevent thought coherence. So the key is to see how something that you do not like, something that you even despise, how it can help you to achieve what you hold true for, that what you want to achieve. And the same with organize and gather, actually, between organize and gather. I remember that earlier someone mentioned about organize and gather, both are required to be structured. Yeah, that's actually very true, because you need to gather stuff first before you can structure them, or before you can organize them to get the structure. And there are also people who come up with the structure already, and they are very sure they know what to gather before going out and gather, and that makes things efficient also. So both way works really well. The key is to see the value in whatever that we are not so inclined to do. Yeah, to integrate the other sides of ourselves. Those sides are still part of ourselves, especially when it comes to things that, it's this again, I have to do this again. Like for me, for example, I have to gather, so I have to do something that I'm not sure, that I don't even know the clear structure yet. I have to go through uncertainty again. So this, if I'm not as coherent as I currently am, this COVID situation will definitely affect my health, not because of the COVID, but because of the uncertainty. Because I don't know what's going to happen later. I have all this plan that I'm going to do this, but now I cannot meet anyone. What am I going to do? I have to gather. I have to gather and tweak stuff, get some new situation arise, and then okay, let's go.
Nice, Bingzi. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Guys, thank you for listening in. If you have any further questions to Bingzi, please ask. Bingzi, how does one get in touch with yourself?
I will. I guess I can leave my email or my contact number or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can share the many articles that you've posted on the health websites that you have. If you could put in the chat box your email and best contact number if you want to share that.
Okay, sure. Let me do that. You mean in this group chat or in the email that you are sending?
Either, both. I don't mind. It's entirely up to yourself.
Sorry, the email?
It's entirely up to you. You can put it in the chat now for everybody, or I can send it out later.
Okay, sure. I guess I can put it in the chat.
Emily?
I believe we all have each other's numbers, do we? Like I'm in some group chat or something.
Yeah, you are. I can definitely make an introduction. If anybody asks for an introduction, I can do that for you.
Okay, sure. But where is the...
Nice. Thank you, Bingzi.